A very good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of Jagannath International Management School, I, Dr. Sanya Chawla, takes immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the technical session 2 of HR seminar titled Empowering Young Minds to Emerge as Responsible and Skilled Professionals. I take this opportunity to extend my warm welcome to Mr. S. Radharanjan. Sir is a board advisor, startup partner, executive coach, and former CHRO of Tata SIA Vistara, and has over 3.5 decades of experience as a human resources leader who has shaped high performing cultures at various growth brands with technical business acumen, prolific communication, and robust development programs. He brings experience across various industry segments like manufacturing, management consulting, financial services, telecom, BPO, and aviation, working across India, Middle East, US, and UK. His focus areas have been in development and implementation of strategy and business initiatives as board advisor, organizational and cultural change for leadership alignment, stakeholder and employee engagement, to name a few. We welcome you, sir, as our chairperson and moderator for session 2.
Thank you.
May I now take the opportunity to introduce our first distinguished guest speaker to the audience, Mr. Bimal Rath, CEO and Managing Director, Think Talent, former CHRO Nokia. Mr. Bimal had deep corporate experience across different industries and geographies, including the USA, Middle East, Africa, and APAC. He is also associated with Center for Creative Leadership USA as an executive coach, with Duke Corporate Education as an educator, and also sits on the boards of several small to mid-sized young entrepreneurial companies. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving ahead, I take the opportunity to introduce our second distinguished speaker to the audience, Mr. Dinesh Brushandi, ex-Chief Quality and Terminal Operations Officer, Delhi International Airport Limited, Senior Consultant and Advisor. Mr. Dinesh is a mechanical engineer with 40 years of experience in operations, quality, and learning solutions. He has to his credit several successful new product launches and many product quality awards, including the J.D. Power IQS Award for GM Chevrolet Spark in its debut year. He is also credited for fetching 12 ISO certifications, instilling lean culture, and driving business excellence at DIAL, Delhi International Airport Limited. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Further, I take the opportunity to introduce our third distinguished speaker to the audience, Mr. P.N. Srinivas, HR Head and Senior Director, India, Subcontinent Procter & Gamble. Mr. Srinivas has over 20 years of work experience. Sir is an alumni of Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, where he pursued MBA HR. Mr. Srinivas is an experienced human resources specialist with a demonstrated history of working in the consumer goods industry. Sir is a strong human resources professional, skilled in organizational development, employee engagement, business partnering, and change management. Not only this, but Sir has cross-cultural experience of working in India, China, Singapore, Australia, and Indonesia. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Now I take the opportunity to introduce our fourth distinguished speaker to the audience, Mr. Sujoy Banerjee, Group Chief People Officer, Gainwell Commercials Private Limited. Mr. Sujoy is a HR professional with 30 years of experience across industry sectors like automobile, tire, chemicals, gases, consumer good, industrial products, IT, pharmaceuticals, FMCG, and infrastructure and construction. He started his career in 1990 with Tata Motors Limited at Jamshedpur, and since then he has worked in various capacities in organizations like Dunlop, ICI, Philips, BOC, Everready, to name a few. Sir has also been a visiting faculty on organizational behavior at business schools in Kolkata, a member of the interview panel of various management institutes across the country for selection of students, and have also been speaker at various national seminars and conferences on HR across the country on various contemporary HR issues. He has served as the president of NHRDN Kolkata chapter between 2008-2014. Sir has been awarded many number of times by renowned organizations. However, the latest one is by World HRD Congress in February 2020. We welcome you, sir. May I now please invite the chairperson and moderator to navigate the session.
Thank you, Dr. Sanya. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jims, for inviting us to be part of this panel. And, before I begin, I think all of us will agree that there's no doubt that COVID-19 is the biggest event to have shocked the world and the businesses since the global financial crisis. In a tremendous effort of maintaining business continuity and while at the same time ensuring employee safety, organizations made a lot of swift changes to the way they work. And this led to the biggest play of remote work experiment in the history of business and industry of the world. Digitalization played a very critical role in achieving this. And many of them who were not digital savvy became digital savvy overnight. Now we are at a point where many organizations are beginning their life after lockdown. They've started opening up offices in limited ways, some full-fledged. Amid unprecedented global losses, concerns about infrastructure, continuing need for workplace social distancing, businesses are struggling to return to the office. But when they do, I don't want to say the cliched phrase of, beaten to death, the back to the new normal, but I will say, what will be the new way of working? What is this new way of working and how will the work environment change? How will processes and coordination alter in the new ways? And more critically, how will the change in these ecosystems affect the people who are the main players in any ecosystem? Most of you will agree that COVID-19 has debunked the preconceived views on employee productivity. With so much of people working successfully from home, it's been proven now, I think, that the rigid office schedules and working policies do not necessarily lead to high productivity. I was reading somewhere about a survey which was conducted across about 7,500 professionals across 30 countries worldwide, where almost 77% felt that work from home did not reduce productivity but actually increased it. So what does this all mean to the future of work? Based on the wellness apprehension of people, businesses have to reevaluate their working models. Remote working will continue. Many companies have said that people will work till end of the year remotely, and some have gone further and says permanently a lot of people are going to work from home. The workplace, with companies moving to a larger work from home model, physical offices are going to be pruned. Many organizations are considering reduction in the size of their premise. If you ask me, in my own personal opinion, offices provide identity and a sense of belonging. We are all social animals. Human beings are social animals. There are also psychological undertones for getting together in groups and working together in groups. This smell and sense of belongingness which we help in interdependence and harmony, we are all missing that. I've been interacting with a number of millennials and Gen Z who actually want to go back to work more from the socially point of view and they're saying that we know how to maintain our social distance, but we want to be there and interact face to face. Over a period of time, I think once we have the vaccine of COVID and we'll be able to adapt to some of the old and new and arrive at a very hybrid model, and that hybrid model is here to stay. With this move, what will the impact be on people? We know that in India, a predominant portion of the workforce will be millennials and Gen Z in the coming years. So some of the questions that come to my mind, and many people who I have discussed with, how will employers start to attract, retain, and motivate employees in the way of working? How will organizations train them and get their learning juices flowing? Because learning cannot be in classroom anymore, not in physical classrooms at least. How will organizations build capabilities that is required for them to be successful in the roles? How do you create the organizational belonging and culture That is the bedrock for success of any organization. There is a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is so true. So how do you create and run the organizational culture in such a hybrid model of working? What will motivate people? And how are you going to empower them to take more responsibility? How do you build resilience in people? How do you may build the nimbleness in people? You know, in the previous channel, I heard them say how to expect the unexpected. How do you manage that? What will be the roles of educational institutions to create the right skill and mindset in the students who are passing out for working in the new way of life? Lucky for me, I don't have to answer these questions, but I have some great people who are extremely knowledgeable and experienced in the panel for them to share their perspectives and deliberate on the subject. Luckily, being the moderator, I can always ask the question whether I know the answer or not. So it's great to have this panel, a very, very powerful panel. Thank you, panel members. Now, 2 minutes, I'll explain the flow of the panel. I'll invite each of the panel members to make a opening statement and share their perspective on the topic. I will ask some direct questions for the speakers. By the time the questions come in the chat box, and someone will be able to share those questions with us. And then we'll see how we go based on the time we have. Let me start with Bimal. Bimal, why don't you share your perspective on this topic of how are we empowering people at this point of time to make them more responsible and skilled in the days to come?
Thanks, Raja, and thanks, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Sanya, and Akhil for sort of having invited me to, speak to the young audience and others who may be there as well. So, Raja, to your question and to the backdrop you said, and I was listening into the previous panel as well. I'd like to sort of maybe share my thoughts on two different aspects. Before I go into the two aspects, I think it's important to perhaps articulate that the unit of change is actually the individual. So while we all know the global phenomena of what's happening, whether it is work from home, organizations, institutions, governments, but like they say, the ocean is made of many drops of water. And therefore, I'd like to sort of restrict my, in a way, sharing to the individual and how the individual, in a way, can adapt to the changing world, if you will. Because the phenomena of the global changes have been, enough and more, I guess, talked about. And, in some ways, each of us is affected differently by the same phenomena, if I may put it so. Yeah. So the two aspects I want to talk about, Raja, and please, by the way, from a timing perspective, just stop me if you feel I'm going over. I think the two aspects I want to talk about are, one is about what I call learning to learn, and the second is about what's going to happen to career curves. Given the nature of this audience, I think it would be of interest to them, hopefully. So on learning to learn, I think there's a lot of research which has gone in. And, while we go into the specific aspects of learning to learn, I'd like to just, maybe highlight the fact that there is an assumption that COVID is a once in a lifetime thing and it is never going to happen again. I would like, people to think about the fact that there's quite a possibility, like we had the global meltdown in 2000, 2008 and 9, COVID is there tomorrow. Who's to tell us that for people who are going to sort of be in careers for the next 40 to 50 years, there will not be 5 or 10 or even 15 other similar ups and downs, if you will, we will be faced with, okay? So the assumption that, COVID will happen and the world will go back to the, whatever the normal is, the new normal as it is being called, and no other upheavals will happen is a fallacy. If you look at the world and the way things, it could be a world war, it could be shortage of water, it could be, religious or political divisions, it could be trade barriers, it could be anything to do with, different aspects of socio-political and economic and geographical and environmental and health related issues, which could crop up as a big VUCA phenomenon, as they call it, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? So learning has to be looked at in that light. And more than what you learn, how you learn is going to bring in the agility, and I think the learning agility somebody earlier spoke about. Okay, so in learning to learn, a lot of research has gone in for many years now, and obviously it has become critical now in the current context, because suddenly we are faced with the fact that we have to build new skills. Whether it is to do with even working from home, delivering a lecture on Zoom as against being in a classroom, and so on and so forth. I think there are four aspects, and particularly for young people, very critical. The first aspect is around aspiration. I'll come back to that in a minute. The second is about self-awareness. The third is about curiosity. And the fourth one is about vulnerability. Okay. So aspiration is very often about putting in hard work based on how much hunger you have inside your stomach. Okay. Very often what happens is that there is an assumption that if I have done an MBA degree or a medical degree or engineering degree, my life is made. I think that assumption has to be sort of in a way challenged, to say that you will have to pick up a new degree, not in the conventional sense, but a new set of skills every 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that will require, a very different kind of hunger and hard work and attitude. Okay. And it will completely depend on how aspirational you are. Because if you're not aspirational, then chances are that your ability to put in that hard work will not be there. That's number one. Number two is around self-awareness. And I think, this is a much talked about subject, from many thousand years, that the more self-aware you are, your chances of being flexible, adaptable, and fit in with the world becomes better. So I'm not going to say anything more, but for the younger people, I would say that if you are aware of where your strengths are and you can build on them, and if you're aware where your gaps are and work for that, I think that would be particularly useful. The third is curiosity. And I think this is something which is coming up increasingly, as a very, very critical aspect of traits, personalities, whatever you may call it. If you are not curious, you're going to be dead. There is only, I heard a lecture from, somebody in Israel the other day. And he's a professor of one of the Israeli universities, and very, very respected globally for emotional intelligence. And he was saying that, apart from everything else, the only thing which is your survival kit is about curiosity. So you have to learn about how to survive in COVID. You have to learn about how to keep your health better. You have to learn about, how can you pick up digital skills to survive, and so on and so forth. But it will only happen if you are curious about it. And the final one about learning to learn, or under learning to learn, is about vulnerability. I would not say this so much for youngsters, but certainly for the previous generations, including mine, that sometimes, as we grow older and we become more experienced, we also lose humility a little bit and assume that we know a lot of things. Okay. I would also say that for a lot of youngsters, sometimes they are a bit too sure of themselves. Okay. So I would only say that, if you are vulnerable to say that, okay, I don't know this, and I'm willing to learn and experiment and take a few risks, as I think Chandrima was saying in the earlier one, that would sort of bring in a significant uptick in your ability to learn, and learn fast and fail fast, if you will, right? I want to link this, Raja, in a minute to the next concept I was going to talk about, which is what I call career curves, right? So traditionally, if you look at, for example, my father's generation, he had 2 jobs in all his lifetime, one job for sort of about 38 years, and then he retired and took on another job for another 12 years, and that was about it, kind of thing, right? My generation, a lot of people would have maybe changed, 5, 6 jobs, maybe 7 jobs, but a lot of us also were, still in 2 jobs or 3 jobs or 4 jobs, okay? More important than jobs, we did an MBA or engineering or a medical course or whatever it is, or passed an IAS, and basically, fed off that for the next 35, 40 years, that sort of skills. What I would encourage the younger group to think about is that many professions which you see today have not even been born. 5 years back, they were not born. 5 years later, these professions will not exist. There will be completely different set of skills required. So if you have a 35 to 40 year career, actually you're going to go through about 8 to 10 different curves. Now, what that would mean is 8 to 10 different jobs, 8 to 10 different set of skills, and 8 to 10 different set of skills which you have also given up. Because one of the things is that a full glass cannot hold any more water. So in order to learn new things, you also need to give up a lot of older things. And that links me back to the earlier thing that when you are learning to learn, curiosity, vulnerability, aspiration, and self-awareness will also allow you to throw out things which are not relevant anymore. Okay. And you will have to do it every 3 or 4 years. So I would encourage a cleansing, a detox, if you will, a skill detox. Okay. And the way I would say it is that every 3, 4 years, examine what do you not to need to let go of, how much do you need to detox, what do you need to keep with you, and pick up a new set of skills, because that will keep you learning and that will keep you relevant in your career.
Okay.
So that's it, Raja.
Thank you, Vimal. I like the way you said it's more of how to learn than what to learn, and also the vulnerabilities and curiosity. And if I link it back to risk taking and learning, I remember my professor, Father McGrath. You're a professor of many people, professor here, and he used to say that when you walk, the child walks and falls down, and when it falls down, it covers more place, more distance than just standing there in one place. So, and you get up from the place where you've fallen and walked. So your progress starts when you accept your vulnerability, take the risk, and start learning from it. Thanks, Vimal, for those opening remarks. Next, I'll go to Srini. Srini, you have some excellent global experience. Why don't you share your perspectives on the topic?
Thank you, Mr. Raja, and thank you, Dr. Sharma, James, and Akhil sir for giving me this opportunity to share the forum with my father, Mr. Dwarkanath, who's been my role model at home and in professional life.
I would say that you were.
So so I live up to the mark. So I would like to start, and have a dialogue on the talent management process, right? So let me go back to one of our famous presidents of Procter and Gamble, Mr. Richard, who made this comment, and I'll tell you the year he made this comment later. He made this comment that if you take away my money, my buildings, and our brands, right, but leave our people with us, we will create and rebuild the entire organization in a decade. So this is a very apt quote Mr. Richard made in 1947.
Wow.
About talent. And and we are sitting in pandemic and to 2020 and looking at reimagining how the new future looks like. So a visionary a quote which we need to keep in mind always. And to all the previous panelists who also spoke about people and talent. So with changing workforce demographics and increasing types of employability, whether the gig workforce, corporations have started rethinking about the talent management strategies. And I think this is coming at an apt time during this pandemic to reinvent across the spectrum. We're also looking to foster entrepreneur mindset, which is the growth mindset, where you fail fast and learn, and also reimagining the talent development to be more a diverse and an inclusive workforce for the future. To tackle this evolving work and leadership, organizations have experienced a fundamental shift. I think we need to look at making from an attract, develop, and retain to more about a believing, becoming, and belonging concept. And this is that I picked up from Dave Ulrich, that it's about believing purpose, becoming part of organization, and also looking at belonging to the culture. So the 3B concept, what I feel would be coming into play very event. What I mean by believing people, believing purpose. Every organization, if you take out, there is an objective, there is a mission, and the purpose for their existence. For P&G, it's all about touching and touching and improving lives of consumers is a very relevant kind of a purpose that we live for. Very relevant purpose for the P&G organization during this pandemic again continues to be ensuring the safety of employees and workplaces, serving a consumer, because they are looking for our products, and serving the community, right? So these are very important purpose, where we continue to believe in this purpose. As we look at this, people do look at, what do the companies stand for and what promises they make before they decide to, engage themselves into, joining or building up a relationship. The second part is all about becoming part of the organization, right? So as you look at, every individual has a personal goal, have their unique skill sets, and they ensure they have their aspirations aspired for to be achieved when they become a part of an organization or join in a company, right? So it is very important that with the rapid pace of changes that are happening, it is essential that you are seeing both from an employee and an organization point of view, that there is a very easy proportionate way that the company is growing, and hence the individual is also growing. Second, are we creating the right learning environment in the organization, which ensures that the skill development also happens, between both the organization and the individual. So that's all about how do you really ensure you are able to have an inclusive workforce, and you're able to build a diverse pipeline of leadership with the right skill sets, which enables the organization to grow and hence the individuals to grow. That's the part about becoming part of the organization. And if that equation doesn't match, then of course we know the eventualities where people do part away, not being part of becoming the organization. The third and very important part is about belonging to the culture. I think every organization has the smell of the place. Every organization thrives on their own ecosystem. For example, Procter and Gamble has been a built from within company. So I'm very proud that I never had to make my resume. So 20 years, one company, one journey, except for moving from Gillette to P&G, which was a local merger that happened. But didn't have the pain to make a resume. Have been there for 20 years. A lot of the people in the company have been there. So whether I worked in Indonesia, whether I worked in China, whether I worked in Singapore, the culture, the principles, the values of this corporation has remained somewhat very much similar for the last 180 years. So it becomes very, very easy to get that skill sets, if you're not available in India, to go anywhere within the company. And it's not about individual driving the culture. It is an organization smell and place, which continues consistently across. So it is not that I, as a Srinivas, want to make some changes is of course acceptable, but it's within the broader framework of the organization culture. So it's very, very important from a day one. We make a lot of emphasis today. And I know with the virtual connects, we are trying to do our best to do a lot of gamifications to get the leadership presence, the leadership role modeling. And the biggest thing that I see as a challenge today is I'm unfortunately not able to work with my colleagues who are pretty much young in their organizations, who are getting deprived of something that I learned when I was a new hire for the first 1 year. I saw my seniors working and learned. And a lot of the distinguished colleagues in my panel itself, and Akhil sir, these are all role models whom we have seen also in the industry and learned, right? So that's, I think, very important for us to learn. So that's my, belief that the 3B is going to be something that we need to look at. The second aspect I would like to cover is on the engagement part. As we go through this, it's all about employee value proposition, right? It's very, very important than ever before. And I think Mr. Dwarkanath mentioned it, and with the reference of co-creation, right? So let me explain that co-creation. It's no more the world that I am the manager and I decide how you want to work, right? So it's not about I am the manager, so I decide how the performance, outcome has to be delivered. I am the manager, so I decide how your career goes. It's now become a situation where we have a dialogue to start with, understand empathetically what the personal aspirations of the individual are, what are the personal situations that people are going through during this time, at least, which will learn us to be more empathetic, and understanding it more of a co-creation between the employee and the company. to say this looks to be the best option to look at. The biggest learning that we had is as we try to look at unlock our sales organization or the offices or the plants, there are different individuals who have different situations at home, personally, coming back to work during this pandemic. So we cannot apply one single formula or a rule card across. So it is very imperative that we understand personal situations. And this is a big learning for us as we move forward to implement co-creation as part of every people process we have, instead of a deployment from one side and creating that. So with that, those were the two aspects that I wanted to cover, the 3B and then the co-creation of employee value proposition. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Srini. I should admit that HR is in your veins. The passion with which you are speaking about HR, it's a replica of what I've heard for so many years. I like the 3Bs. When you said believing in the purpose, becoming part of the organization, and belonging to culture. Lovely words, and I think they'll be very easy to remember for every youngster who's hearing this. And what I also heard you say is that over a period of time, we are now moving towards individualization of how we manage our employees, rather than take a broad brush and brush across. So thank you so much for your opening statement and opening remarks. Let me go now to Dinesh. Dinesh, what do you think on this subject? And you bring a variety of focused quality onto the subject. So why don't you share your perspective, Dinesh? Dinesh, are you there?
Dinesh is on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Raja. Thank you, Sania. Thanks, Jim's management. Thanks, Bimal and Srinivas, for sharing your thoughts. Let me put a perspective. So what I have read, what I have researched, and what I have reflections based on that, I'm just talking about two keywords out of the topic. The first being empower and other being skilling. So if you empower and skill, I believe that the young mind would automatically become responsible, and also they will become successful in a way. So in my viewpoint, the journey from the entry of an employee, which is something like enlisting or enrolling as an employer or a education student, begins there and goes through something like 7 steps to ensure that this entity becomes a person who can engage and who can excel then. The first and foremost important is educate, then enable, then encourage, then experiment, then examine. After that, you enthuse the employees or your students, and then only the empowerment comes. So these are the 7-step journey, and then after that, the engagement and the excelling starts. Now, I'm going to focus on the enabling part of it at this point in time. Enablement is obviously slightly different than education. So education, if I mean academics, the enablement would be certainly consisting of examination and the experimentation. Somebody said in the previous day that take risk, fail, fast to fail would be a good idea. And this experimentation and examination is all about that. There is going to be a lot of enthusiasm which has to be brought in the younger generation. And then there are techniques and tools, which Srinivas was talking about it, that how do you really get people to enthuse to do something or other. Let me talk about the enablement a little bit. So in my viewpoint, I recommend these 7 sets of practices which go across the time. So it is old time, today's time, time to come. These are going to cut across the time. Only thing what is required is a small fine tuning and a manifestation of this. As there is a evolution to everything, there is evolution to these practices as well. The first of the practice, consider a pyramid like a thing with a top practice, which I recommend sense of prudence. without which survival in today's VUCA atmosphere, I coined a word called VUCA atmosphere, which is very, very difficult. Now, having anticipated what is in offing, it is imperative that one locates and then never loses the sight of pole star. I have coined it in a way to make it SOP, SOP being the norms. That done, one has to be constantly sieve the dynamic premises from amongst the maze of arising tasks, both demanding and conflicting also, to get a sieve of priorities. So this is the third set. If you absorb these abilities, it enhances one kit for a alignment within, or this self-alignment. But one has to realize that individual is an element of a big system. So we need to get into the system integration tools also. This ecosystem, the way we interact with that makes a lot of difference. So if you have to live and thrive in the nagging neighborhood, one may consider the therapy of system integration tools as follows. So a skill of patience is very, very important. It is the most important element which one has to get, that to be able to understand people and to make people understand of what you are talking about. The next thing is about spirit of partnership, which obviously you are not an individual who is going to be there in the system. So triumph together has to be the spirit. It cannot individual win. It has to be a collaborative win. So there is a word which is being coined these days, is called as collaboration or collaborative competition or competitive collaboration. So that's what I think I mean. After that, there'll be a sync of various proficiencies. So you don't have one skill yourself. So you'll have to certainly looking for the complementing skills around you. And that is what is going to be bringing you that. These are the 6 ones, which are, one is the self-alignment and system integration. That done, one has to be into a constant state of preparedness. That is the SOP number 7. A holistic honing of all the 7 spokes of the wheel. And I am calling this wheel as species chakra. We are a species chakra, which is spiritual, physical, emotional, cultural, intellectual, most importantly now ecological and social. That will ensure not only your rejuvenation, but also the rejuvenation of ecosystem. So this is what is the first part, which is the empowerment and the way the practices are going to help. Now let me talk about the skills quickly. The pandemic has thrown us into a situation where it's a vicious vortex of, and this has been referred earlier also, it's a vicious vortex of volatility, velocity, veracity, variety, variability, virtuality, most importantly again, and vulnerability, as both my earlier speaker colleagues were talking. Now, if one has to emerge victorious in this kind of a situation, we need to really talk about redefining this SMART. The SMART was always in corporates and now being taught in the Education Institute is specific, measurable, realistic, achievable, and time bound. So time has come to change the smartness, looking at what has been happening around. So these are my prescription, my therapy of 7 smartness techniques. The first and foremost important is going by the history of evolution of a mankind. We need to learn from that. The survival, medieval, arrival, revival, and thrival. How can we pick those historical inputs and start building into our learning cycles, the relearning cycles? That done, we can also look at a structured, mindful, adaptive, reimagining techniques. That is what I prescribe that one should look at an education level also. If these things are brought in, it will be a good amount of springboard for the students when they go into corporates to really pounce and bounce from. After that, looking at the current situation of the industrial growth, a service mindset acquisition and reach out techniques are very, very important. Let me also talk about the variety of data, and that makes that sense making ability and refocusing techniques are very, very important. That's the fourth smart. Social media. Social media is an advantage and an adversary. So there are two techniques which are required here. One is the social media advantage ripening techniques, how to take the best benefit of social media. At the same time, young minds should be also taught how to get out of the adversary. So social media addiction restriction techniques are also important from my standpoint.
Okay, okay.
So, and last but not the least is about oneself. If I call myself as avatar or my body, I have to look at my soul, mind, avatar, regeneration techniques.
Okay.
So if this kind of things have been brought into the system, I think that's going to be very, very helpful. So I was just thinking of giving something which is little off the, let's say, a normal and let's say new normal kind of a stuff, and talking about something which is not conventional stuff. So these are my two thoughts about empowering and the skilling part of it.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Dinesh. You know, I can see that you live and breathe quality, because just like the 7 QC tools, anything which you say has 7 points, and that's outstanding. And, you know, I was just looking at your name. Dinesh B is also 7 words. It's lovely.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Sujoy, you know, coming at the slog over of the, speaking last, normally you have much more to say because you know what has not been said. So Sujay, all yours in the opening statement.
Okay, thank you, Raja. Good afternoon, Dr. Sharma. Good afternoon, Sania. Good afternoon, Akhil Bhai. Good afternoon, Dwarka. It's always a pleasure to speak in front of people whom I've idolized all your life in HR, and I could make out what was a challenge for Srinivas talking in front of his father. So, and good afternoon to all my fellow colleagues and fellow professionals and young minds across this digital platform. I heard Bimal, I heard about agility, I heard about curiosity of learning. Srinivas talked about 3 Bs. We just heard about Dinesh talking about new ways of learning. I would like to share what has happened in our organization, relate to it in terms of what I feel are the challenges and how the young minds should work towards that. When pandemic hit us around the 3rd week of March, we are an organization with a sales and service of Caterpillar equipments, and we also have manufacturing facility. We also into mining. So we have quite a few verticals of operations. So we actually did not know what hit us. We were taken aback, but then we have a policy in this company, or a belief in this company, that whenever something hits you or adversity confronts you, go back to your values. Because we feel that the values of the organization, what Srinivas was also talking about, you need to, the values actually binds you in these terms, in these times of crisis, these times which is challenging. And our values in this company are, we call it, like Srinivas talked about 3 Bs, we call it the 3C plus 2E, which is equal to Gainwell values. The 3 C's stand for customer centricity, collaboration, caring, excellence, and entrepreneurship. So these are the 5 values we in Gainwell, as Gainwell citizens, we're expected to live by and breathe. And we also have an employee value proposition framework, what we call the circle of growth. So what we said is, how do we live these values during these pandemic situation? We survive because of our customers. So first 15, 20 days when the country was under a total lockdown, we went on working in our coal mines. We worked for 24/7, our coal mining operations in Eastern coal fields. From 15th of April with Hindustan Zinc in Rajasthan, we started managing our operations in coal mining operations and serving our customers, because they went on producing their coal, they went on producing their non-metal, the metals. So we couldn't say that it's in a pandemic situation, so we won't be there. So taking all precautions, we had to go on supporting them, but then precautions mean what? We have a value called caring. I said caring for us means professional caring and professional caring, personal caring and professional caring. Personal caring means ensuring that the employee and his family is safe, both physically and mentally, in the organization ecosystem. So we had to recalibrate all our safety protocols and provide them the entire infrastructure of being safe, and also talk to them on a regular basis in the leadership team to ensure that they're mentally keeping fine. The mental health was all fine, because some of them work in these mines they're without their families. So the families are worrying way down in UP, and they're working Rajasthan, or way down in Bengal and working Rajasthan. So they are in a huge mental stress. So constantly talking to them. One is to ensure with our partners, Hindustan Zinc or Eastern Coalfields, to ensure that the COVID protocols are there, the infrastructure is there. That's easier to manage. But then to manage their mind, to mental health, was the biggest challenge. That's where we said that we have to live by our commitment to being an organization which is known for being a caring organization. So we said that we're going to service our customers. We're going to be a caring organization. And what happened was, some of our customers who were running these oil rigs in Northeast, Oil India, ONGC, they wanted their oil rigs to run 24/7. So the entire backup gensets had to be there to support the customer. So our employees were going out in Duliajan, in various parts of Northeast, to support these critical customers. Now, gradually, when the unlock started happening, our customers in the construction space started our service engineers to go and attend to their machines. Now, the service engineers are very worried. We were saying that no public transport, don't take public vehicles. You will take a company-owned vehicle, go there. Construction sites, the construction workers were staying in camps where COVID had hit. So these service engineers were worried. They had to stay back to to restart or to attend to an excavator, which was a part of a construction project. So we had to be constantly engaging with them in terms of giving them that support, giving them that emotional support and the physical support. So this is a journey we've been going through together. We've been working together. So we have been trying to live our, because we found that it's our values of collaboration, of caring, and of customer centricity, which has kept the wheels of the organization going. And we have got innumerable recognition from our customers saying that we are the only partner who has given them the support even during the pandemic times, which gives us a lot of satisfaction. And entrepreneurship and excellence, because I know for sure that I got a call one day from one of my parts retail outlets in Jammu, who opened up his parts retail counter at 5 o'clock in the morning, because from a nearby town in Pulwama, a contractor was coming to get his equipment running. So he had to buy the parts even before the curfew or something starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this guy wakes up at 4:30 in the morning, goes to a retail outlet, opens up the parts store and services the customer. So innumerable cases happening. So they were actually pushing themselves, and in terms of living the true value of excellence. They believed in actually not only customer centricity, but also excellence, pushing themselves beyond the boundaries. And we innovated a lot of things during this time. Our entire marketing platform went from an offline to a digital platform. Yes, a company like P&G obviously uses the digital platform much more, but if you sell an equipment which is starting from 20 lakh to a 60 lakh to a crore plus, you cannot always sell it on a digital platform. Yes, Hyundai is selling its cars on a digital platform. We created that e-marketplace. We created a marketplace where people could buy parts online, the spare parts online. We gave them schemes, discounts, and we partnered very aggressively with Caterpillar. And Caterpillar was on a digital mode. In fact, what this pandemic did was to aggravate the entire digital mode. We had to actually accelerate the speed of change.
Okay.
So we actually, I'll just take another 30 seconds, Raja, maximum a minute. So actually what I would like to say is this culture of the cultural of this organization was tested, and the values of the organization ensured that the culture worked as a glue. And also another thing which I want to end is that, which Bimal was talking about, curiosity we're talking about agility of learning. I think all of us, all employees should have what we call a business continuity plan. We should have a personal continuity plan.
Okay.
What do we want to do? It should be a PCP, what we need to calibrate for ourselves to stay relevant, to stay agile, and to be more meaningful to the organization. That's exactly what the learning delivery mechanisms of organizations need to redesign, rather from an en masse delivery mechanism to much more individual focused delivery mechanism, so that individuals stay relevant and individuals want to stay within the organization.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll end it out here.
Thanks, Sujay. Thanks. It's heartening to hear how the values and the culture actually helped you tide over the COVID situation in a very nice way. Wonderful to hear the opening statements. And, what I would like to do is, I have a few questions in my mind, which I would like to throw to the individual panel members. And by that time, hopefully we'll have some questions which will come up. And Dr. Sanya has said she's kindly accepted to coordinate the questions and curate them. Bimal, I'd like to come to you first. You spoke about learning to learn. Okay, how do you think one should develop the skills in this area of learning to learn?
I'd say, three things which are, I think, important. One is around experimentation, and what I spoke about very briefly about fail fast. I think you have to try out many things in today's world. Let go of a few very quickly if they're not working. Pick up a few which are working and sort of move on. And it could be to do with very specific individual behaviors. It could be to do with technology, etc. So experimentation and fail fast is number one. Number two, I think, is cutting out the noise. Okay, there's so much of noise outside, there's so much of distraction outside. Most of us and our minds are not really built to handle that level of noise. And I think people who will succeed in the future are the people who are able to cut out the noise and only pick up the relevant skill and then learn whatever they have to learn in context of that. And I think the final one is around reflection. I think there is so much of activity orientation these days that our ability to reflect on something has actually gone down. We can't even sit quietly without, fiddling around with something, including a phone or a message or whatever, even for about 5 minutes, right? So my view is that these three, reflection, cutting out the noise, and experimentation and fail fast are the three critical ones for learning to learn.
In fact, Bimal, I still recall the book you recommended me when we were speaking about concentration, The Deep Work.
Deep Work.
I'm telling you, that was an outstanding book which you recommended. Thanks for that. It made you focus on what you wanted to do and cut out the noise, as you said. And it was very helpful. Dinesh, let me come to you next. What do you think are the role of the educators to empower the young minds when they enter the enterprises? Dinesh, are you on mute?
Yeah, he's on mute.
Yeah. So conventionally, there are many programs which are something like campus to corporate, etc. So I was just going through this very recently, and what I thought is that the kind of skills which are really required, I talked about those 7 steps to empowerment, the freedom to experiment, or let's say some simulation kind of a situation which can be done. Or for that matter, how are people examine, Vimal talked about fail fast. So in the simulations, if somebody is allowed to fail fast and learn fast equally, so that's going to be very different. So I think that now educator has a good amount of onus on him, simulate the corporate within the campus in case that can be done. And this simulation, the people should be actually put through this kind of experimentations. So when I joined the company, after about 3 to 4 years or 5 years, so I'm talking about the old time, the new times are a little faster, but however, the management technique, the related gamifications, etc., I was exposed much later. Now, if you have to prepare the young mind in advance, I think that has to be pulled back. I'll just strike a quick simile. So when I was going to a nursery and now the nursery, if I compare, so that's a huge amount of a difference. And I'm talking about something similar, that if you are trying to prepare a corporate executive of 10 years hence, you will have to bring back corporate of 10 years then within the campus and start working around that. So this is my take on this, Raja, if that answer the question.
Thank you, Dinesh. You know, I've heard many people say, right from my second standard, I want to be a HR professional. Whether they knew what an HR professional actually did or meant was something which is there for them to learn, as well as the education institutions to teach them. I know on the simulation side, I have had experience with quite a few, I would call them contemporary education institutions, which combined a lot of on-field work with their education. So it was a combination of people working in corporates on live projects, but also coming back and studying. You know, it used to be a great learning experience. You know, I can still remember when we were studying in Excel, we had this personal understudy program where during the course, we had to go and sit with a practicing HR manager for one term and write a paper on what the person actually does through the thing. So that sort of learning and simulation. Thanks so much for that, Dinesh. Srini, let me come to you. You spoke about a lot of things on how to co-create. Now, what are the few changes you think we need to make on how to engage the young minds to be good future professionals?
Thank you, Mr. Raja, for the question. And I think before I answer this specific question, the toughest question I got yesterday night was from my daughter. She said, why did you take up HR? And then she gave it a pause. And I said, okay, what's the answer? And I hope Mr. Raja tomorrow doesn't ask such tough questions. But that was a very good prelude for me. And then she paused for a minute and she said, is it because grandpa is also HR? That's why you took HR. I said, oh, that might be, could be. So that is easy. So it's always challenging to, I think the first and the foremost thing is hearing from them, what's in the mind. I think that itself answers the 50% of, gives you 50% of the solution, right, from my point of view, right? And I think I'll just take an example to just, put this in perspective. I think we spoke about employee well-being. So in P&G, we try to look at 3 aspects of total well-being. So, and during this time, it's very, very critical. We also amp it up a lot more. So it's all about healthy body, happy mind, and meaningful heart. So this is the overall, co-creation we do. And when we say we do co-creation means, healthy body is pretty straightforward. People do take care of their health and, physical fitness and everything. But during this pandemic, we also had some competitions where we can do virtual contests and uploading things. And this is not my idea. This is coming from a group of young people whom we had put in as the pillar teams from the organization, whom we knew were very enthusiastic, and they would go and do the marathons, and they're pretty much high at the peak on their fitness. So this idea of co-creating with organization, a competition when you're virtually there, and of course there are a lot of ways to do it. You have CultFit and pretty other organizations which give you these online subscriptions. So, but converting into a contest to say who did what and putting the points. For me was might be something that I would not have considered, but I think with co-creation with the younger people happened. Second was happy mind, right? So as we look at it, we thought about how do we really enroll. A lot of the times we have done employee assistance programs, and we all know, and I think a lot more knowledge is there in this group, that not more than 2 to 3% of the organization will pick up the phone and call people and say I need counseling, right? So we typically have the 3 to 4% hit rate. But what we started embedding is before any drumbeat meeting happens, which is a big meeting for 4 or 5 hours of functions or business categories, we would do a stress test or an ergonomic test or a 5 minutes of neck and the meditation kind of a thing, so that what happens is it's embedded into the meeting agenda itself, that today we'll listen to a music, we'll listen to this, where you're getting into a very peaceful mind, because you don't know, have you just done the vegetable chopping at your house and come for a conference call, or you cleaned and mopped the floor, or had a big fight with your wife that because you're just sitting in front of the Zoom calls and doing conference calls, right? So just to unsettle them and settle them back into that. So that's what happy meant. Meaningful heart is all giving back to the community, right? Do you have a purpose that you go and do the bigger, so are you feeling proud about what the organization is doing? Again, as a HR, I will not be able to co-create that individually. As the facet of community, giving back to the community is an individual passion of every individual employee who really cares for the community. So again, we kind of do a co-creation where there's a pillar leadership of a couple of passionate people who come back and say that, hey, these are the proposals, Srini, how do you want to look at it? And we fully empower them. I think the most important is, don't let them get the ideas to the leadership team in a boardroom and then say, yeah, this is not good. Will this work? Will that not work? I think they know the organization, they sense the pulse. So let them go, empower them. What will happen is you will embrace growth mindset this way, where you will either be successful with the innovative idea, or you will fail, and then it's not a big issue. You will revamp it and then move on. So that's my humble submission on this.
Oh, thanks, Srini. Thanks so much. Sujoy, you were talking about how the values helped you in navigating the pandemic. There must have been a lot of impact on people during this entire pandemic. And how did empowerment of these people or the values they were following help them navigate this and also manage the business processes?
Okay. People initially were very, very worried because they were not allowed to come to office. So as quite a few people saying, they would smell and feel the organization, and we are all social beings, and therefore being next to each other gives you a lot of comfort. So people got very, very worried before when they were asked to stay back at home. So what we did was we constantly got into group meetings with them, and they were usually for 15 minutes, half an hour, where the leadership team, their local leadership, the CMD and the joint managing director, the HR head, we were constantly talking to them and trying to figure out that what is happening in their lives. How are things happening in their lives? And we said that, okay, your customer, you are located in your home. You are not coming to the office. You know your customer the best. You know your solution you have to give it. You know what price to your customer. You take those decisions, you get it validated by us. And allowed the owner teams to form their own, what should I say? We didn't call them COVID teams. We said we formed a team of COVID warriors. We could take decisions at the zonal level and just keep the business head informed that this is what we are doing. And they went on implementing the decisions which they felt was right for their team, which was local, which was a local demand. So one was the business aspect of it, one was a people aspect of it, because at times when a person was having his wife unwell and it's just a two-member family, then what sort of support does a colleagues of the team go and support that in terms of to ensure that there is food at home, there is medicine available at home. So those sort of supports, the local team started giving it within the defined protocols. So we empowered them to take the decisions in line with the broad guidelines.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sujay. A request to the people who are participants, please start sharing your questions in the chat box so that we can respond to as many as possible in the time we have. Bimal, this question is for you. I always look up to you to guide the younger generation, which you have done right through your career. What behavior shifts do you think will be needed for the younger generation moving forward? You are a young generation, I'm presuming, but younger than you.
Yeah, thanks, Raja, for that. So I think there are 2-3 things which are important. In my opinion, certainly, as I see a lot of young people who are extremely bright, very knowledgeable, have all the information, but somehow don't really live up to their potential, as somebody was saying in the earlier panel, in a different way. I think we are all, as young people, and I would say this for myself as well, I think we are overly worried about, in a way, the environment around us. But I think it is very important to understand that the situation is the same for everybody. So even if you take COVID, the situation is pretty much the same for everybody, right? And obviously there are some things which will be different depending on which company I work for or which institution I study in and all that. But in a very broad sense, the situation does not change. What changes is how do I respond to the situation? And that's the first thing I would tell a lot of young people, that, don't worry about what is happening too much outside. Be aware of it, but ultimately focus very heavily on how you will respond to the situation in terms of your own attitude, your own skills, and your own capabilities. That's number one. I think the second one, which I think and this is like Raja, you were asking, this is a very fundamental behavioral shift, whether my locus of control is outside or is it, inside, saying how will I respond to the situation. So that's a very fundamental behavioral shift. The second one, which I think is a more, and I said this in a different way, but let me reiterate that. I think the ability to sit back, absorb the information, draw analysis and insights from it, rather than very quickly reacting, which basically means a little more reflective around how do I respond if this situation hits me, is going to be absolutely critical. So if I take a very small example, right? So let us say that, and just building on some of the things Sujoy and others were saying, let's say that I find out that my neighbor is infected with COVID-19. What is my response? Do I sit back and think about being scared and therefore responding in a particular way? Or do I sit back and say, here is my opportunity to help somebody. Here is my opportunity to actually go out and showcase my heart, so to say. So I think unless you sit back and, have a thoughtful response to things around you, and again, it is a very deep behavioral change, because most of us just react to situations rather than, respond to situations. So I think those are the two big ones, Raja, in my mind.
Thank you. If I had to put it colloquially on what you said, don't be a cowboy where you shoot and then aim and then shoot. That is number one. Yeah. And I go back to the basics of quality, PDCA cycle. You plan, you do, you check and reflect, and then act again. I think it's a lovely cycle, which is, relevant in any situation. And what you just said made me go back to that. So, in Srini, I'll come to you. What do you think organizations need to do to build a very strong and sustainable professional?
I think two facets that the organization can look at. I think Mr. Bimal Rath already mentioned it in the first one. It's all about the skills, right? So I think it's diagnosing the capability of the workforce and comparing them with the future needs at the starting point itself. The challenge is all going to be whether it's going to be digital fluency, taking over. So today, my selling organization is taking calls, orders on the phone. I'm ordering on e-commerce. My whole digital marketing is different. You have IPL now being seen only on, digital platforms, right? So it's no more the audience there. So the consumer, the supply chain landscape is completely changing. So I think skills becomes imperative. And I think in Procter & Gamble, again, what we did is try to create a program we launched called Ignite, where we look at a platform for people to go and, pull out whatever skill sets they need to learn from on an ongoing basis. And the cool word nowadays is it bit size? Yes, it is bit size of learning at your own time, whenever you want to. So I think if you're able to understand what are the skills that are required, that is first important. The second one, I think, is also a T-shape, skills that are coming up. T-shape is all about, I'm going to be an expert in one area, whereas I can be understanding multiple facets of the business. So which we call it as multifunctional leadership. Okay. So it's now going to be slowly evolving that we will have these kind of, emergence where it is not necessary that only certain functions will drive the businesses, but it all depends on the skills that you have can become the business leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. Sujay, I'm going to throw a question from the audience. Vaishnavi Verma, thank you so much for your question. How can how COVID-19 affects job opportunity in petroleum industry? As we have very limited opportunities. What are your thoughts on this, Sujay?
COVID-19, as of now, has affected the employment market, to be honest, because companies are recalibrating their employee cost and looking at their ways of running the operations, revisiting their organization structures, because the new way of working, the process digitalization has made quite a few roles and has recalibrated or redefined many roles, or in some organizations have made them redundant. But then petroleum is one industry which I don't belong to a petroleum industry, but we service a petroleum industry like ONGC, Oil India. They are very upbeat. They are in fact, because they use a lot of Caterpillar equipments as backup power systems to the rigs. So as far as Oil India, ONGC outlooks, business outlooks are concerned, they are looking at ramping up, because the dependency on importing crude from overseas, they want to be a bit more self-sufficient, because the government is focusing on whatever capacities or whatever availability we have in this country. We should leverage it much better and much more. Even Reliance is going aggressively on the petroleum front. So I don't think even Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan, so all of them are working aggressively. Yes, the models of business processes are undergoing change. So the new skills will be required.
Okay.
New skills will be required.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dinesh, I want to ask you one question. What are the skill sets required in today's world? And do you think the academic learning and the preparation for competitive exams alone is good enough to progress in your career or progress to become a professional?
Okay, so let me take an analogy to answer this question. So it's something like a passport and a visa situation. So if I put this competitive skills, etc., as a passport part of it, I think to be able to get visa, you need something else. And that's what I mean by this additional skill sets which are going to be required. So from an educator or an employer standpoint perspective, how does one prepare a person when he gets into a real battlefield? So that preparation.
Okay.
So I used to get a lot of graduate engineer trainees for that matter. And what they have learned at their level and what we used to learn at our level, I think there is a deterioration in the quality. Number one, when this is the passport part of it. So that has to be really, really upgraded. Now, when they come in out over here, and I always tell them this. So whatever you have done, Mr. ABC, my dear friend, what you need to do is to acquire 2 qualifications immediately in the immediate time frame in the school of life called experience. And that the first qualification is degree in communication engineering. So how do you communicate? How do you really relate with the people, listen to them and reflect and respond to them? So that's very, very important. Okay. The second degree is MBA in management of relationship. So MBA in relationship management and administration of task, time and teams. If you do this 2 additional qualification, so how do you take this kind of preparatory work back into the education institute? That's one question one can take it further and answer and reflect and keep on.
Thank you so much, Dinesh. Bimal, this question is for you from Koyal Karuri. When an employee is changing his job or her job for 3, 4, 5 times or even more, then when he or she is going to the new organization, what kind of impact is he carrying as he was not consistent in the organization? What extent this is favorable?
So I think let me clarify. Okay, maybe I did not, communicate well enough. Changing of a job does not mean changing of an organization. Okay. Yes. In fact, it has to be very clear that you could be within the same organization and continue to change different jobs or choose different career tracks, kind of a thing. I think what needs to be understood is that earlier, the mental phenomenon was that I will learn for 3 years, then I will maybe learn a little bit more for 3 years and then start creating impact. I think modern organizations will say, please create an impact in a much shorter period of time. Do something in the next 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is, build on that and move on, because somebody younger, hungrier, better than you can do that job, possibly quicker, better, cheaper. Okay. So if you are not moving on from one skill set to another, please understand that in this world of, digital access and, younger people coming in with much brighter ideas and skills and so on and so forth, as you become older in your careers, you become redundant much more quickly. You know what we call half-life of a professional. So basically you will become redundant very quickly. So I think the point to be made is not so much about waiting to create impact, but having the agility to be able to create impact with skills very quickly, so that you are able to sort of showcase in a way from a younger, from an employee perspective, I would say, don't wait for 5 years to create impact now with your skills. And that is what, when the company will also help you build additional skills and provide you opportunities. I think that's the way to look at it, rather than looking at changing organizations necessarily. That's not necessarily the way to look at changing jobs and skills. Yeah.
Thank you, Bimal. We have an example of Srini in this panel. He has been in the same company for 20 years, but he has moved about 5 to 6 jobs. So that's something very similar to what you're trying to say. For the different experiences you get and the impact you create within the same organization. Thank you so much. It's 1:56 now, and very, very difficult to create a conclusion for such a session where such diverse thoughts and experiences are shared. So I'm not going to even attempt that. But what I would want to say is that if I were to look at all of us are trying to many times gaze into the crystal ball to see what is the future, and some of us enjoy being a clairvoyant and some of us don't. We try to visualize things in our mind. So, but I would always say that for a person to be a true practitioner, and also you need to have 2 things with him. One is the magnifying glass and the binocular. Binocular for forecasting better, and a magnifying glass to analyze and get insights from what he or she is doing. Closer look at realities. And that is the DOII kit, which I always recommend to any young professional, binocular and a microscope. It was wonderful interacting with the panel. Thank you so much, Bimal, Dinesh, Srini, and Sujoy. If you ask me, I learned so much out of this whole thing. And also thanks to Jims, Akhil Bhai, for giving us an opportunity to be here, Dr. Sharma, and for the audience for bearing with us. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sanya.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So here we come to an end of technical session 2. Indeed, it was very insightful, effective, and productive session. On behalf of Jims Kalkaji, I extend my thank you to our chairperson, guest speakers, delegates, faculty members, and students for interactive and successful session.